And when it was first announced that Christopher Nolan was directing a modern take on the Odyssey, I was unbelievably excited. Like most people, my excitement came purely from seeing Christopher Nolan on the poster. I didn't really know anything about the Odyssey. On reflection, if it said something like Chris Nolan's name on a poster for Rob Schneider is a carrot, then I would have been equally, if not more, excited. So immediately after, I had to do what 99% of people did and pretend I knew what the Odyssey was about and nod along whenever somebody brought up its unmatched importance to Western civilization. But after listening to Tom Holland and Dominic Sandbrook break down Homer's original text on the rest is history, and also Tom Holland breaking down the Odyssey movie, which was a wild ride, I was ready to sound smart whenever anybody talked about it, baby. So this is going to be a quick spoiler-heavy review, purely while the iron is hot. One day, I want to do like a massive breakdown of the Odyssey and some of the major themes and ideas that really stuck with me. But that'll take a long time to write and produce and get right. And so I want to do that with Project Hail Mary as well, which is another film that just left quite a big impression on me. So for now, we're just going to have some sort of slippery, uninformed thoughts. Ugh. First question is, did this film meet the expectation? If Nolan is attached to a film, there is hype. He's arguably the best living director in the industry. His body of work includes The Dark Knight, Interstellar, The Dark Knight Rises, Oppenheimer. In the lead up to its release, however, the film did get caught up in the culture wars, with people really upset about its casting choices before it even dropped. Basically, just another thing in our society to make us either angry or sad, because, there isn't enough of that. In particular, people were complaining about Lupita Nyong'o playing Helen of Troy, because a black woman being the most beautiful woman in the world is ridiculous, apparently. And there was a rumor that Elliot Page was playing Achilles, but that turned out to be a lie. He's playing Sinon, who is the soldier who tricks the Trojans into taking the horse into the city of Troy. So people spent months screaming into the void about a casting choice that was invented entirely in their own minds. And there was this big appeal to historical purity, which I understand to some degree, like if you're depicting real people, especially ones in recent memory. But this is a story that has a giant one-eyed monster and a sea witch turning men into pigs. And when people found out that Nolan was drawing from Emily Wilson's 2017 translation, people were upset again, saying it was a feminist translation and that Nolan was on some sort of woke jihad to butcher the original Homer in an attempt to make the film more palatable to modern audiences. If listening to that made you as exhausted as it made me writing it, then I'm sorry. But I'm also not sorry because I've just given you a crash course, which was hours of me researching the Odyssey, trying to get my head into it before I watched it. So which Odyssey did we get? Was it the woke train wreck? Or was it, a kind of standard Nolan blockbuster? I'd say what we got was actually a bit more complex than people were ready for. A lot of what makes this film really interesting in Nolan's catalogue of films is that a lot of the film's nuance is rooted in the stuff that we love Nolan for, like non-linear timelines, which kind of all converge in this building crescendo at the end of the movie. How in Oppenheimer, how it cuts between Oppenheimer's security hearing and Lewis Strauss's Senate confirmation and Kitty Oppenheimer taking the stand. Like, all three are separate stories and they converge into this kind of single overwhelming moment. Sorry if that sounded way too pretentious. Like in a musical. In the musical where like the final song has like bits of all the other songs in it. You know what I'm saying. You're smart. You're smart. You know what I'm saying. And then of course there's these scale, massive physical sets which Nolan is obsessed with. Like he bought a real Boeing 747 to crash into a hangar in Tenet. Well, he's building these full-scale ships and he's tossing them into the water for this movie. Nolan refuses to make everybody's life easier and use a green screen, but it creates this kind of tangibility, like this brutal feeling of groundedness where when the waves hit the boat, or when blood or mud cover the soldiers, like you feel it. Like you're not watching like a Marvel movie, you know what I mean? You're watching something that feels rooted in reality. And on that same groundedness, if you want a picture of how Nolan handles these kind of mythical monsters, you just have to look at how he handles the villains in Batman. Like when Nolan made The Dark Knight, he didn't give us a Joker who was a campy villain who fell into some chemicals. He gave us Heath Ledger's Joker. It was grounded, it was terrifying, yet it was totally faithful to the spirit of the character, of what made the Joker, and other Nolan staples such as Anne Hathaway and Matt Damon. Well, all those things are present in the Odyssey. If you love Nolan, you'll love the Odyssey. But it's also a bit more than that. In my opinion, the Odyssey really is Nolan's masterpiece. It's going to be the film that he is remembered for. And sorry if that's a hot take. It's awesome. It's awesome, gang. It's so good. And if you didn't like that, you're not going to like this. I actually think Nolan drawing from Emily Wilson's 2017 translation was a stroke of genius. Based on the internet backlash, it kind of feels like what a lot of people wanted to see was this kind of silver, shiny, lionized warrior, Odysseus. But Wilson gives us this kind of grounded, raw portrait of a complicated, flawed man. J. Robert Oppenheimer wasn't a superhero. He was a man. He was a messy, complicated man. To borrow a line from George R.R. Martin, we love them for the things that they are, and we forgive them for the things that they are not. Odysseus isn't a paragon of virtue. Like the film's timeline, he's broken. He's fractured. And this seems to be why some people didn't seem to, get this film, if I'm being honest. People wanted a fun, high seas popcorn adventure, but this isn't a film about a guy fighting mythical beasts on an adventure home. It's ultimately a film about a man who cannot escape what he did during the war. At its absolute core, this is a masterpiece about our own relationship with our own trauma. Throughout the film, we hear about this thing called Zeus's law, which was a real thing in the ancient world. Treat strangers with kindness because they may be gods in disguise. Practically speaking, you treat strangers with kindness because one day you may be a stranger in need of being treated kindly. A law of human kindness. This exists within Christianity as well. It's known as the Golden Rule. Jesus summarizes the entirety of the law and the prophets as Matthew 7:12 says, "So in everything do to others as you would have them do to you." If you strip away all of the pomp and fluff and institutions of Western civilization, those things, if you strip all of that away, that single principle is the core bedrock holding the whole thing together. Picture the scene. Odysseus on the beach with all his men staring at the impregnable walls of Troy. He spent 10 long years rotting on that beach in a brutal and exhausting war of attrition. 10 years of watching his men die in the sand. 10 years of moral erosion. And to finally end that nightmare on the beach, what he does is he comes up with the Trojan horse. He breaks Zeus's law. He uses sacred symbols of peace as a weapon of deceit. He allowed Athena's holy temple to be desecrated and slaughtered people who opened their gates in good faith. There's an amazing line at the end of the film. We are the people from the sea. Throughout this whole movie, characters are talking about the sea peoples, the mysterious historical raiders who wiped out entire Mediterranean civilizations during the Bronze Age collapse. Everyone is terrified of them, and we keep waiting to see them throughout the film, but these monsters never appear on the horizon, but we never do. Instead, in a moment of regret and traumatic memory, Odysseus realizes the truth. We are the sea peoples. It was not some outside horde coming to destroy civilization. It was us. We broke Zeus's law. We destroyed the fragile moral rules that protect us from ourselves. We became the monsters. This is why this movie works so well. It takes this 3,000-year-old myth and grounds it in reality, in history, and he uses it to tell a brutal truth about human trauma. When you destroy morality to win a war, you don't just defeat your enemy, you tear down the world around you. It is the nuclear bomb of the time. They didn't lose their way because of angry gods. They lost their way because once you abandon morality to win a war, you're no longer a hero. And this trauma haunts Odysseus throughout the whole film, holds the whole film together, ultimately. There's this part of the film where he's on an island with Calypso and he eats this thing called the lotus flower. It's a drug that's used to dull his memories. Why? Well, it's because the reality of what he does at Troy is too painful to bear. He'd rather lose his mind, his purpose, his identity, than spend a single sober moment alone with his own conscience. And I don't know about you, but I do the same thing. Like, we dull our emotions with substances, with scrolling, with work. To reflect quietly on our own trauma is just horrible. It's awful. It's why the timeline is fractured in the film. Like, traumatized minds don't process time properly. Like, you relive these moments in violent and intrusive flashes. Every island Odysseus lands on isn't a new chapter in a hero's journey. It's just another psychological trap where he tries and fails to run away from his trauma. And you see this dynamic play out in how Nolan handles Zendaya's character. Throughout the film, Odysseus is haunted by these visions of Athena coming to give him counsel. Early on, I was sitting there thinking, maybe they were right about casting Zendaya, because she's not giving me, goddess of wisdom vibes. Like, especially earlier in the film, Telemachus is talking to a beggar and he says, "You have old eyes, you have wise eyes, you have Athena's eyes." Zendaya's eyes, to me, didn't look particularly old or wise. They just look like normal eyes. But then that turns out to be intentional in this devastating reveal. She isn't the goddess Athena at all. Like, she's a memory of an average young woman, priestess, who was slaughtered in Athena's temple during the sack of Troy. So Odysseus isn't being guided by a deity, he's being haunted by the face of an innocent girl who's murdered because of him. She doesn't have wise eyes. She's this inescapable physical reminder of Odysseus's sins, his ills. And some people might not like it, but I think it's very timely and relevant and inspired. So did the film meet its expectations? Well, no. It's more complex than I think people were thinking. It's more uncomfortable, but it's a masterpiece. Second question, did the casting affect the film? This film had the equivalent of like the roster from Super Smash Bros. So many big names. Too many, in fact. It was like one of my birthday parties. I'll give you a quick rundown. Matt Damon, very good. Anne Hathaway, amazing. Tom Holland, very good. Robert Pattinson, very good. Elliot Page is very good. Lupita Nyong'o is very good. Travis Scott, fine. Charlize Theron, good. Benny Safdie is amazing. John Leguizamo, he's okay. John Bernthal, fine. So did the casting affect the film? No. Final question. What am I going to give it out of 10? Would I recommend it to anybody else? In spite of the discourse around this film, what makes Nolan's interpretation so good is how it panders to the modern audience. Think about what breaking Zeus's law actually means. The golden rule was there to protect the most vulnerable people on earth, the refugee, the displaced stranger, the beggar on your doorstep who has nowhere else to go. It demanded that before you ask for their papers, their tribe, or their ideology, you give them shelter, food, and safety. It was the only barrier protecting Western civilization. At Troy, Odysseus broke Zeus's law. he stripped fellow human beings of their divine value just so that he could justify winning Agamemnon's war. And if you look at modern culture today, it's hard to argue we're not doing the exact same thing. We have built an entire society powered by the active demonization of the vulnerable. Like, we demonize the refugee drowning in the channel. We demonize the immigrant looking for a safe or better life. We demonize the poor and the homeless, writing them off as drains on our society or invaders. A lot of people use them as scapegoats for societal decay, and some people use them as these props, right, for moral grandstanding. And both sides convince themselves that because their view is righteous, basic empathy doesn't apply to the people on the other side. What the Odyssey shows us is that when you decide a human being isn't worthy of basic dignity because they're poor or desperate or different, you aren't protecting your society. You're tearing down the fragile social contract that holds it together. You're not defeating the sea peoples, you're becoming the sea peoples. Yeah, which brings us to the question at the heart of the film. After trauma has completely changed you, can you ever go back to just being a normal person? In traditional myths, the answer is a naive yes. Like, the hero slays the monster, he comes home, everything magically resets. But Nolan gives us something a bit darker, a bit more grounded. Odysseus survived the war, but he fails the ultimate test that follows. See, Odysseus eventually returns to Ithaca and he slaughters all the suitors, and he has to deal with the consequences of his actions, reclaiming his home through the exact same violence that has defined so much of his journey. But there is no clean victory here. Like, his actions come at this great cost. It forces him into exile and shows he simply cannot return to the man he was before Troy. Nolan's point, I think, seems to be that, healing doesn't mean pretending that the trauma never happened or resetting yourself to the person you were before the world hurt you. That person is gone. It means confronting what suffering has made you and recognizing the possibility that you could be consumed by it. And the challenge isn't simply surviving what has been done to you, it's deciding what kind of person you want to be in the aftermath. So those are just some thoughts that me and my sister had. In my opinion, it's a near perfect film that tackles some massively meaningful and important things, and does the Odyssey and a lot of its core characters a lot of justice, and I really love that. It's a near perfect film. I'd give the film a 10 out of 10. Go watch it, enjoy it.